Joining us now for more is Michigan Democratic Senator Elissa Slotkin. Senator, thank you so much for your time. You received a classified all-Senate briefing on the Iran attacks today. I know you can't talk about many particulars, but overall, were you satisfied with the information you heard from the administration?
Well, it was definitely good to have the briefing, right? Normally you'd have a strike and as soon as possible, next business day, you'd have a briefing. So it was good to finally have it. And it was definitely noticeable that the Director of National Intelligence wasn't there. But, you know, I think it gave a picture of significant damage that was done, certainly, by the strikes. I think it's way too early to know, and I think that was borne out in the meeting, that it's way too early to know the exact parameters of the battle damage. And again, the military conducts the strike, the intelligence community conducts the battle damage assessment. So it's going to take a minute to figure that out. But there was significant damage done, and I think it was good that we got the brief.
You, of course, used to work at the CIA and served 3 tours in Iraq alongside U.S. military. Given that, how do you feel about the classified intelligence about the attack success being debated out in the open?
I mean, look, you always want both our military and our intelligence community to be completely apolitical, to not have it be this politicized football between Democrats and Republicans, because it's what keeps us safe, right? That should be off limits for this kind of political gamesmanship. But I think the president is not using the intelligence community to make his statements. He's saying whatever he wants to say. And I think it's just important when we're talking about issues of war and peace to be really clear on the facts, especially for a country that just got out of Iraq and Afghanistan within living memory. So, you know, I think I don't like to see it politicized. I think it's really hurtful to the country.
Iran, one of America's main adversaries, is certainly more crippled than they were this time last week. And now Iran and Israel have a ceasefire. Would you say this is job well done by the Trump administration?
You know, again, I think it's still too early to tell. You know, I was at the Pentagon after I was at the CIA, and we worked on Iran planning back then to think about these kinds of scenarios. It's definitely the weakest I've seen Iran, I think, because of these strikes, but also just the changes that have been happening in the region over the past 2 years. But I think my influence on this really comes from serving 3 tours in Iraq, right, where the Iranians were not good actors. They were killing Americans. They were using ballistic missiles. They were, you know, using terrorism to achieve their goals. But I also was in Iraq to see how, you know, the administration back then thought, oh yeah, the operations in Iraq will be really easy, one and done. We'll manage it all. And meanwhile, 20 years later, we still have troops in the country. So I am concerned about people like the Secretary of Defense and the President managing escalation. When this strike happened, we're lucky that none of our soldiers were killed in our bases in Qatar and Iraq and other places. But there's no doubt about it that Iran is the weakest that it's been in my lifetime.
Democrats are in a position on the so-called Big Beautiful Bill of really just trying to play spoilers at this point. We've heard a growing number of Senate Republicans express concerns about the Medicaid cuts. Are you talking behind the scenes to Republicans on the fence, trying to get them to say no?
Well, I think we all are, yeah. I mean, I think particularly given the cuts to health care. I mean, I think to put it in real terms, these Medicaid cuts that they're talking about and the cuts to Obamacare would mean that every American, not just someone who's on Medicaid, is either at risk of losing their health care or paying more for their private insurance by January 1. And I think they're trying to hide that and paper over that. And so using that issue, a bunch of us are trying to have those conversations with Republicans, like, don't do this. You know it's not a popular thing. You know it's not the right thing to do to cut people's insurance and to make people pay more. Is there any American who thinks that health care is going well right now in America? So yes, we're having those conversations. At the end of the day, the president is trying to browbeat people into voting for this thing, and soon. And so it's going to be up to my Republican colleagues whether they have a spine on these issues or not.
Today you spoke about the future of the Democratic Party at the Center for American Progress and said Democrats need an economic war plan, and if they have to slaughter some sacred cows to do it, then you have to do it. You also said we don't act as a team. In sports, if a team is struggling, you replace the manager. Hard question here, but do you have confidence in Senator Schumer and Leader Jeffries, who are the managers, so to speak, in your party?
Yeah, managers, they're hard jobs. They're hard jobs. Look, look at what happened in New York, New York City in this election a couple of days ago. I think there is no secret that the country is looking for a new generation of leaders across the board, whether in a mayoral race, governorships, Senate, House, like across the board. And that's not new. I think that's a hangover from what happened in the last election with President Biden. So I don't think that's a secret, but I think it's important that Democrats understand that if we don't offer a vision of our own and not just play defense, then we're not going to earn people's vote.
Just to try to re-ask that, do you have confidence in Schumer and Jeffries at this point?
They are the leaders of the House and Senate. I work with them every single day. I push on them every single day, especially in the Senate. I think they would attest to that. And we need to work as a team, and we need wartime generals who are going to get us there because of what's going on in the country. And I have no big announcement to make. I would just say the pressure is there from inside the caucus, but also from the grassroots.
Senator Slotkin, we thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thanks.